9. Now, Panorama.
On Panorama, we investigate the private clinics diagnosing ADHD online.
I think you fit the criteria for ADHD very well.
We reveal a health scandal affecting thousands of people. Are patients being let down?
Absolutely. People are being let down. Big time.
Private clinics handing out powerful drugs. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You just couldn't wait for me to get off the call. You get 7 minutes and you're put on a prescription which is supposed to last for life. And failing to carry out basic checks. Would you think it's safe to prescribe me medication based on that?
No, absolutely not.
This is an investigation that reveals a health scandal. It starts with an email to Panorama from a worried mum. Her 21-year-old daughter has just been diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. The woman says her daughter couldn't get an assessment on the NHS, and so she paid to go to a private clinic. The clinic diagnosed her with ADHD after a 40-minute chat online, and she's been prescribed powerful drugs. ADHD affects thousands of people. But the mum, who doesn't want to be identified, is unhappy about the way her daughter was diagnosed. She's asked us to investigate. How much was it?
It was £695, and she was given a private prescription, which cost £100 a month.
How was the assessment?
Well, it only took about half an hour.
So they assessed her, diagnosed her with ADHD and prescribed her medication in around about 30 to 40 minutes?
That's correct.
Whoa. ADHD is a medical condition that can have a profound impact. People with ADHD can seem restless and may have trouble concentrating. We can all display symptoms at times: fidgeting, getting distracted, acting impulsively. But that only adds up to ADHD if those symptoms severely affect your daily life. It's a big talking point on social media.
And it turns out I have ADHD. Who'd have thunk it?
And the important distinction between symptoms we can all experience and ADHD often gets lost.
6 ADHD behaviour traits you might not have known about. You find it really hard to tidy up as you go along.
Many are taking online surveys to see if they might have the condition. So I try one. I find it difficult finishing a task or project. Sometimes. I find it difficult to sit still and often fidget or squirm very often. I can't sit still. And here's the results. Your results are highly consistent with ADHD. Support groups say ADHD has long been underdiagnosed. Now, there's a big rise in adults asking to be assessed.
I'd say of the order of at least 20 times more people coming now than there were 5 or 6 years ago. From almost sort of 0 to 100 miles per hour in a couple of years.
And there's just more and more and more who are coming through the doors.
Yeah. About 18 months ago, there was a trickle, but now there's an absolute flood.
I want to know how ADHD assessments should be carried out. So I've come to see an NHS consultant psychiatrist who runs a specialist clinic.
You've come today to find out a bit more about whether you may or may not have ADHD, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Dr. Mike Smith says patients are now waiting more than 5 years for an ADHD assessment at his clinic. He's agreed to see us because he's so worried about what's going on.
So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about not just ADHD. I need to get a broad picture of your psychiatric health, of your background, understand a bit more about you as a person. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Fine. So you ready to start?
Yeah, let's get going.
Okay.
The assessment feels like a full mental health MOT.
How was it for you sitting through a class?
I'd always been moving, so like my foot. So I am quite fidgety, so my leg does bounce up and down quite a bit.
Yeah.
Or I will always be twiddling or a pen or maybe doing a doodle. It lasts more than 3 hours and covers almost every aspect of my life.
I would tell you at this stage that you don't have a diagnosis of ADHD.
Dr. Smith says I don't meet the clinical threshold for ADHD in any of the 18 symptoms.
You've outlined that you've got occasional problems where you might forget something, occasional problems where you might feel a bit fidgety. But in order to meet the threshold for a condition, these need to be things that happen frequently and cause problems for you in your life. And there's no evidence that that's the case.
My NHS assessment followed the guidelines issued by the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, or NICE. But I've been told some private clinics aren't as careful. We have spoken to dozens of patients and former employees, and they say that almost everyone who goes to a private clinic ends up with a diagnosis of ADHD. One clinic keeps coming up. Harley Psychiatrist in Harley Street, London. When did you start working at Harley Psychiatrist?
So I started in 2020.
I'm talking to a former employee whose words are spoken by an actor. She says when she started work, Harley had around 500 patients. Now they've assessed 9,000. You were there for quite a considerable amount of time, and you've seen it grow. Do you ever remember a time whenever someone who came forward for an ADHD diagnosis didn't get one?
Yes, but that was very, very seldom. It wasn't many.
Casey faced a 3-year wait to get an ADHD assessment on the NHS. So she borrowed £685 to pay Harley Psychiatrists instead. She says she was diagnosed after a 45-minute online assessment.
I wanted to be able to meet my psychiatrist in person, but that wasn't an option from them.
And did you ever get down here to actually see someone?
No, I never came down here.
This is the address that Harley Psychiatrists give on their website. Will we have a look and see if there's a Harley Psychiatrist?
No, it says D, not doctor.
Yeah, D. Just going to see if there is actually anyone here. Because this is the address online.
Yeah.
Hi.
I'm just looking for a Harley Psychiatrist, please.
We don't have psychiatrists here in this building.
Oh, there's none in this building whatsoever?
No.
Oh, right. It's just, it says online that they're here. But, oh, I think she's gone. Lawyers acting for Harley Psychiatrists later told us it has routinely seen patients here, even though it doesn't have a permanent clinic. I'm going undercover as a patient to see what goes on during an assessment. I'm using my middle name James. I've paid Harley £685 for an ADHD assessment. After filling out a series of questionnaires, I have an online appointment. So here we go. This is the moment of truth.
All right, well, let's get you assessed and see where we can go from there.
Okay. Despite the company's name, the assessor isn't a psychiatrist. Olga Pahulets is a psychologist.
Do you recall being quite a disorganized child? So, for instance, having a messy bedroom, things like that.
My mum would definitely say yes. She runs through a checklist of questions about symptoms.
Would you say that waiting was difficult? Like when you'd have to wait in a queue?
Maybe sometimes if the queue was really long. I answer them all honestly.
Would you say that you still become distracted or even just bored by things quite quickly?
I can get bored by things, certainly the more mundane things. But there aren't any detailed follow-up questions.
Would you say that these days you can be quite loud-spoken?
So, not loud-spoken, so I've changed that. You know, if I'm out and about.
Sure, but I'll put it down as a symptom just because it requires effort. Okay, is there anything I haven't asked you about that you feel like I should know?
Obviously, I've watched all the videos on social media.
Sure.
The meeting has just ended. I just wonder what they're going to do now.
Okay, and we're back.
Sorry, I must have been rabbiting on too long.
Well, I could keep asking you more questions, but I think I'm going to change my mind. So I think you fit the criteria for ADHD very well.
So what does that mean now? So what does that mean then?
You'll have it in writing officially that you've been diagnosed.
Okay.
And there's no expiration date for this, so you are diagnosed for life.
Okay. Well, lovely to meet you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was genuinely extraordinary. I clicked on the meeting at 3:30. It's now 23 minutes past 4, and I've been diagnosed with ADHD. It was like she was going through the motions, and I now understand what people say when they say it felt like a tick box exercise. The psychologist Olga Pahulets is the same woman who assessed Casey. I booked an assessment with Harley. And what do you think she said?
She said that you have ADHD. I mean, I'm not surprised. I feel shocked, but I also feel like I knew what you were going to say.
So this is the bit, I do want to share some details of what we've been up to. I went and had an assessment on the NHS for ADHD.
How long was it?
About 3.5 hours.
No. Three and a half?
Yeah. And what it was about my mental health and my history. And at the end, he was able to say, I did not have ADHD, but it was so thorough and rigorous.
I mean, that's what I needed.
Do you want to take a minute?
I mean, I wanted to do it through the NHS. Like, you know, I love the NHS. I knew that Hartley was bad, but I didn't realize they were that bad.
Casey is now getting support for her mental health. I've now received the psychologist's report. But to get a prescription, I'm told I need to talk to a Harley psychiatrist. Dr. Mohan Rathnaya.
Can you hear me?
Hello, doctor. Hello, I can hear you.
So you already been made known of the diagnosis, yeah, from our clinic.
Harley's lawyers later told us it's the clinic's psychiatrists who make the diagnosis. But after just 3 minutes, Dr. Rathnaya is already suggesting ADHD drugs.
Have you thought about the medication?
What do you think would work?
So yeah, if you ask for my recommendation, I would say let's start with Concerta XL.
Okay.
See if it helps you. And then increase the dose. Most people say only small.
He's prescribing a powerful stimulant. It's a standard ADHD treatment, which is safe and effective if properly prescribed.
The common side effects can be like a bit of nausea or headache in the beginning, couple of days, and then it settles down. Yeah, so have some food that would help in the breakfast before the tablet. Yeah, you need to keep an eye on the BP and pulse because they're just the guidelines. Yeah.
Okay. But the psychiatrist doesn't tell me that the drugs can have much more serious side effects than that. And he doesn't ask me if I'm suffering from any other mental health conditions.
If people are started on medication when they haven't got the condition, well, firstly, it can make other conditions worse, other conditions like psychotic illnesses or bipolar disorder, but also just merely being exposed to that medication can be risky for people. So unnecessarily being exposed to that medication is dangerous.
Okay, right. If you don't have any more questions, let me get on with this prescription and everything. And I'll see you in 3 weeks.
Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. All right.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
I actually don't know what to say. And I actually felt like he just couldn't wait for me to get off the call. We're dealing with vulnerable people, people with complex mental health histories who are coming forward to these clinics. And that's the way they get treated. You get 7 minutes and you're put on a prescription which is supposed to last for life. The prescriptions cost £52 a month, and I'm told I'll need follow-up appointments costing £195 a time.
Thanks.
Have a read of that.
That's gobsmacking, isn't it? There's no detail in that plan at all.
I'm showing the psychologist's report to GP Dr. Jackie Appleby.
There's nothing that would give me confidence that a proper assessment had been done.
Would you prescribe me, or would you think it's safe to prescribe me medication based on that?
No, absolutely not.
There's no way you would give me...
No, absolutely not. The things that worry me about it are people being misdiagnosed, people being on medication long term, so 20, 30 years down the line, they start having problems which they would not have had.
Lawyers for Harley psychiatrists told us clinicians also take account of information in pre-assessment forms and that diagnosis of ADHD depends on the answers given by the patient. They say there have been numerous patients who have not been diagnosed with ADHD, and that the suggestion our client is misdiagnosing adults with ADHD is untrue. The clinic accepts that we should not have been able to obtain a prescription and has updated its processes. Lawyers for the psychiatrist say their client stands by his diagnosis. He would normally take between 30 and 45 minutes, but in this case, he did not consider it necessary because of the psychologist's report. Lawyers for the psychologist told us that while her testing produces results indicative of a patient having ADHD, such a diagnosis is formally made by a psychiatrist. I want to know if other private clinics are behaving like Harley. So I've made an appointment with a clinic called ADHD Direct in Glasgow. Once again, former staff say that almost all patients get a positive diagnosis.
There were certainly patients that didn't receive a diagnosis that I assessed.
But generally speaking?
I think that there would be a 98 to 99% positive outcome of the diagnosis.
Did you ever question whether some of them might not have ADHD?
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes it felt like it was just too quick, like it was way too quick sometimes, the assessment. I felt really dangerous and I was upset because it just is unsafe, and that was happening more and more. I'm so ashamed of even just like working there.
Before my appointment, me and my mum have to fill in questionnaires. The NICE guidelines say assessments must be conducted by a psychiatrist or a suitably qualified clinician. At ADHD Direct, I'm assessed by 2 nurses. Hiya, how's it going? One of them's new, so she's being supervised by a colleague. The online assessment costs £1,095. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. They ask more questions than Harley about my medical history.
Have you got any health problems, any current health problems?
Not that I'm aware of. No. And the assessment is longer, 1 hour and 40 minutes.
Do you ever find yourself finishing off other people's sentences?
Sometimes, yeah, I would. But again, it feels like a tick box exercise.
What kind of things do you avoid at work?
I would avoid really anything that is boring. And there's little attempt to find out how seriously the symptoms affect my life.
What about scabs and things? Do you pick them?
Sometimes, yeah.
Hi, James.
Hiya, how's it going? 3 weeks later, I get another ADHD diagnosis.
You scored 8 symptoms for inattention.
Okay.
And 6 symptoms for hyperactivity and impulsivity. So that means that you meet the criteria for ADHD combined type.
Okay. And once again, I'm advised to take stimulants.
So, first line for adults in accordance with the NICE guidelines is stimulant medication. Okay? You get stimulant medication because it works quicker and it's more efficient.
But this time, I come clean before I get the prescription. Lawyers for ADHD Direct say there would have been more checks before I got the drugs. They say my assessment included a full developmental and psychiatric history, and the clinic stands by its diagnosis. They say ADHD is under-identified, under-diagnosed, and under-treated. The clinic has no incentive to over-diagnose, and an audit showed 10% of the patients seen did not have ADHD. It's not just private patients who are being let down. As part of the government's drive to cut waiting lists, the NHS is paying for thousands of people to be assessed in private clinics. In England, the NHS is under a legal obligation. If the patient decides a waiting list is too long, they can request that the NHS pays for them to go private. This is one clinic where the NHS pays for patients to be assessed. ADHD 360 is based in Lincolnshire. Patients and former staff told us appointments are short and almost everyone gets diagnosed with the condition.
I'd be given a list of 6 patients per day, and they would come on the hour every hour. I didn't feel comfortable with that at all.
On the hour, every hour?
On the hour, every hour. I mean, there was a lunch break, but bum, 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 bum.
Did you think it was safe?
Absolutely not, no.
ADHD 360 says clinicians are only expected to do 2 assessments a day. My online assessor is a pharmacist. Within a minute, Shehzad Malik says he thinks I've probably got ADHD.
Before we begin, you would have filled out a questionnaire online beforehand on the portal.
Yes.
That kind of shows that you are likely to have ADHD.
The assessment lasts 75 minutes, and that includes 5 minutes talking about football.
The thing is, you don't have a proper striker.
No.
You've got the, what's his name?
Bamford. The NICE guidelines say you should take a full psychiatric history. But that doesn't happen.
So I can say, across the board, you do have ADHD.
Okay.
You have a lot of the symptoms for both inattention and hyperactivity and impulsivity.
Once again, I'm prescribed stimulant medication without making all the proper checks.
So you've got like the gold package.
ADHD 360 charged me £950. That includes follow-up phone calls, but doesn't include £89 a month for the prescription.
So we'll send a report, that'll go to your GP and that'll go to yourself as well. You'll get a copy of that. So that's just everything we've spoken about today. And that'll confirm the diagnosis of ADHD.
Okay. ADHD 360 told us it's regulated as an NHS provider and delivers high standard assessment, diagnosis, treatment and care for thousands of patients. Its qualified clinicians are trained in its own academy and its assessments meet all accepted best practices. On this occasion, its prescription policy was regrettably not followed, and procedures have now been reviewed and enhanced. There is no doubt that many patients who go private will have ADHD. But our investigation reveals how some clinics hand out unreliable diagnoses and put patients on powerful drugs without proper checks.
Thousands of these assessments are taking place. And when you think about the scale of the number of people that potentially might have received an incorrect diagnosis and might have been restarted on medications inappropriately, the scale is massive.
Patients being let down?
Absolutely. People are being let down, big time.
We've exposed a scandal at the heart of how ADHD is being diagnosed. A scandal that's putting patients at risk.
These people were supposed to help me and they took advantage of me. I wasn't someone who needed help. I was just money to them.
Details of information and support are available at the BBC Action Line website.